Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I really do like to take this time because for me, I just want to stop and say thank you to our guests because I deem them coming with several things, man, that I personally honor and respect, and that is time. The misuse of that commodity, I've seen that done many times in many people's lives, don't even know who they are. But I want to thank you so much, Victoria, for coming and sharing some of this precious commodity with me. The other is your journey, because I know how precious that is, how powerful it is. It houses all that you were and all that you are today. It has made you this. And so I want to thank you so much that you're here to share with us. And welcome to Threads of Enlightenment.
Ken, thank you so much for welcoming me and for creating this beautiful empowerment platform. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you so much. Tell the people about your creations, the things that you have given birth as a result of your journey. What are they? And so we can get to know you at least from that aspect.
You know, it is such a beautiful way you describe it, because people would say products or services, but they are creations, aren't they? I mean, I was pondering on how you chose to describe it, because I think when you look at something as creation, or as I call it, a co-creation, then there's a very different level of responsibility. It's a tender ability to oversee what you've been given versus possessiveness. You know, it's like in the Lord of the Rings, you go from my precious to, what a miracle. And I get to be a part of it. And that's what I genuinely see. Everything that we offer as a company is these little miracles, little miracles of insights. The company's name is You to Shine, and every letter stands for a value that we stand for. And the I stands for innovation. And I look at innovation as inspiration and implementation. I think a lot of us are inspired and we don't implement it, and the talent dies. And a lot of us implement uninspired ideas. I've done both. So when I say a lot of us, I'll just might as well say I've tried it all.
Yeah, I've done it.
and I found that when you're inspired and you implement the idea, a miracle of creation is born. And so the most recent baby that we've had that we love and we treasure is Empower-Me app. And Empower-Me app and its purpose is to bring people to the point of being empowered by the divine, by the access to the divine power that is open to all who are open to it. And so it consists of different sets that equip people to either heal from grief. My grief set looks at 90 aspects of grief. I see that we're grieving. A lot of us are unaware we're grieving. And some of us suppress grief or numb it. But grief unprocessed robs us of joy of healing.
Yeah.
So there's this my grief set. There's my money set, which is aligned with my book, Prosper Me book. And it talks about 35 universal principles or laws. The reason I call them universal is because they apply to everything universally. So there's a law of gratitude. It's applied to every area of your life. The Prosper Me book applies it to money. The Empower Me app applies it to your daily life. And so the app has all of these incredible sets that allow for you to seek and find tools to help you on your daily journey. And it also has 3-minute guided meditations or visualizations. We've come to know that meditation calms our mind, but very often our mind wanders. And so the 3-minute guided meditations purposefully help you to focus on one topic or one theme. So that's our app. I love it. I use it every day. My joke is that even if it was created for my team, it was well worth it already because we use it every day. And then there are books. And then we have an amazing team of coaches. Our coaches are all Empower Me team of coaches, and they have a different expertise, anywhere from Accept Me coach, to our coach that helps you know how to accept you as you are, because you cannot change what you don't accept.
Yeah.
If I'm giving you a phone and I say place it somewhere, only by taking it can you choose where to place it or let go. If I'm
Yeah.
giving you a phone and you say, I don't want it, and you push it back, you're stuck in a place of resistance instead of opportunity of change. So we teach our clients to accept where they are and who they are through love and forgiveness so that they can become who they've come to become. And each coach, I just used one, but we have Lead Me Coach who empowers you to lead from a place of love. Love for you, love for your creator, love for your clients, love for your organization, and so forth and so on. So for every product and every service that we provide, including our Quantum Freedom subscription group, where I work with clients as a group weekly, everything that we as a company do and represent stands under this little formula of light me up. And me stands for each one of us as mortal matter, materially manifesting, that surrenders to eternal energy, the essence that expands through us. So our little physical self choosing to surrender to our spiritual self by surrendering to God's love. And I say God is a great overall designer. However you have met your designer and your maker at this point, let that essence expand you to the new level of connection. And love is life originating vibrant emotion or energy in motion. I believe it is love that has created us, continues to create our life, and continues to create the products that we bring into the world.
I think love holds the whole thing together. And that is why one of the instructions that we were given is that we would love our enemies. And so one must learn to love, and the basis by which we exist is love. You have to first discover the love with your God. The principle is to love your God, and then love yourself, and then you love your neighbor based on your relationship with your God. So a lot of folks that if they don't have that connection, you do not have a baseline by which you can judge and start from. So that when you love me, I want to know, what is your baseline? Where did you get that information? So you must first love yourself. You mentioned so much, Victor, and I cannot wait to get into this conversation because I want to know what happened to this woman to cause her to produce all of this wonderful visions that she had birthed in her and delivered. So talk to us, Victor, about your childhood. And some have heard me said that it is a lab by which a couple of scientists called our parents began to mix things together from what they have perceived is the good stuff. And so they began to deposit information into you and I. How was your family, siblings, all of that type of stuff?
I was born in the former Soviet Union in Ukraine. And in the context of love, I believe my mom and dad have taught me how to love without necessarily saying it. You know, as you were asking about the childhood, I always go with the first impression that I'm guided to share. And that impression is, since I was a little girl, my mom and dad took me to a village a few hours away from where we lived, where my grandma and grandpa were watching me. And because my mom and dad had to work and I was out of kindergarten, you know, in the summer. And I had such severe allergies. We didn't know anything about being allergic to cats back then, but I had such severe allergies to cats that my cheeks were actually seeping, like, you know, they were oozing. They were just oozing.
Wow.
And if I slept overnight, my cheek would get stuck to the pillow, you know, and my grandma would like wash me off the pillow in the morning. And my mom read somewhere that carrot juice helped with allergies and skin healing. And she would work, and on the weekends, she would buy all of these carrots, ton of carrots, and she'd drag them on the bus. We didn't have a car, so she would take a bus for hours, for 3-4 hours to get to where I was in the village. And she would shred the carrots by hand and squeeze the juice by hand, no fancy juicers. And, you know, I look at that, and I think if you had to describe love to me, that's what it looks like. You know, I get choked as I think about that. And so in a way, love was poured into me, literally. And I never was confused about what prosperity was, because I felt abundant despite the minimal material possessions. And very early in my life, I believe I've made a conscious decision to never forget that no matter what material possessions would come into my life, to go back to when did I feel most abundant? When my mom stood there squeezing that juice as I was a little girl, not understanding the sacrifice, but feeling the immense love. So that's just one little example of, I believe, what's been poured into me as a child, which I think is the greatest strength that it has given me, and the greatest responsibility to find that one person who has not felt that love and be able to pour it into them and say, you're not a perfect stranger to me. I have received what maybe you have been robbed of. Let me love you and upon you until your heart softens and opens up to a much greater love of your Creator. That's become the driving force and the fuel behind everything that I do.
Wow, that's a powerful story, great imagery. Love is an action process. It is not a word where you speak. I had a tendency of not saying that word, I love you, until I knew at the point where I did. I remember I'll give you a story. I just remembered it. I was dating this girl and she said, I love you to me. And I looked at her and I said, thank you. And I didn't respond. At the time, I couldn't truly honestly say that I loved her. I enjoyed her. And as we spent more time, she just got there faster than I did. As we spent more time, and I began to appreciate her at a deeper level. We were at some game, I thought it was, some place where you wouldn't tell someone that you loved them. And I turned to her and I said, I love you. And she looked at me, she said, here? You're going to tell me here? And I said to her, yeah, I'm going to tell you here because I know right now that that's how I feel. And I want to let you know that. And so it is something that I always believe that one must understand when you release those words. It causes you, it demands of you a continuous action, a continuous sacrifice of self in some ways where you're looking at the other person and her or his needs and you're mindful of it. And so it takes a conscious way to live. Here you are, this young girl, experiencing the beauty that is a beautiful picture of a mother serving someone that she loves. How did that, watching that and being impacted by it, how did it govern your behavior when you interacted with others looking at this example of your mom?
Wouldn't that be a nice fairy tale if I said, and then she lived loving ever after? No. Then she stumbled and fell and crawled through mud of judging others for every possible thing they did differently from her. And she insisted there's only one way to believe and one way to love. And then, she had a conversation and the baby said, really, girl? Really? But truly, it's beautiful to look upon a lesson from a point of awareness where we are now.
Yes.
But the journey from the lesson taking place and the awareness of the lesson, it is never wasted. You know, like you've talked about a gift of time, and I often teach that we say there are three resources we're given, which is time, energy, and money. But the reality is there are three aspects of one resource of energy. Mm-hmm. Because what we put our energy to, we make time for and money for. Yeah. And what we withdraw or what drains our energy, you know, it's a powerful connection to be mindful that we have this infinite resource that we can connect to through our very limited capacity, and how we channel that energy will define our life. So to go back to what it has framed for me is When I had my own children, and I have made a very fair share of my learning discoveries, we could call them mistakes, but hey, what fun is that? Learning discoveries. I was
Yes.
homeschooling my daughter. I homeschooled both of my kids for quite a while, but it was the moment that comes to mind with two moments. We'll be fair and we'll tell a son and a daughter with sheer humility. With my daughter, I was homeschooling her and I was explaining fractions to her. So I don't know how old she is, 8, 9 maybe. And here's the great teacher trying to explain fractions to her, and she's not getting it. And she's not getting it, and I'm losing. I am losing it. And before I know it, I hear myself screaming at my child about fractions. And all of a sudden, I have this out-of-body experience, not in a good way, going like, look at you, girl, and now look at your child.
Yeah.
Right? And it was the most powerful moment of humility for me to say, stop.
Yeah.
Right? Stop. And then the next step is, now that you've stopped, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. And now ask your child to forgive you. And so one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a parent early on was, if I want to feel love, I need to forgive myself for every single time I was not loved.
Yeah.
For otherwise, I will become guilt. And I will live as guilt. So you first forgive for when you're not loved. And only through forgiveness, you can become loved. And then the second lesson, and that's where I started asking my kids for forgiveness. And I tell any parent, you want to connect to your kids. When you make a mistake, say, forgive me. Don't say, I'm sorry. Why? When Moses talks to the burning bush, Moses, the great prophet recognized by Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, when he is directed to take his people out of slavery, he's directed by God's voice, and that God's voice comes to him as the fire in the bush, right?
Yeah.
And Moses says, well, who am I to tell them that sent me? And one of the most powerful answers is in that he hears, I am the great I am. Tell him that I am has. So I am is the name of God. Mm-hmm. We're taught not to take God's name in vain. We do it every day. You know how when we say, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm a loser, I am broke. So do not say, I'm sorry. When you say, I'm sorry, you're taking God's name in vain. You're not sorry. But when you ask, forgive me, you own what you do without explaining it. And then you can forgive yourself. Yeah. And I'll tell about my son when we have a better turn for it.
That's one of the lessons that I learned with my children as a single dad with 4 of my boys. And when I did something out of, one of those anger outbursts or something really detrimental to my children's development, I would kneel down and come face to face with them. And I would ask them, please forgive me for my actions and so forth. So that's one of the first things that I learned with my children, because they are grown men now, and they tell me that those times were very powerful to them, that I made sure that I wasn't standing above them in type of like an authoritative position, but I knelt face to face with them. I wanted to face them. And then I would engage in that conversation with them. And I believe my sons and I today are a little closer because of those type moments that we had. I was not perfect, but when I did recognize I had crossed the line, I came and I asked for forgiveness. And I know how powerful that is for them, but I know how powerful it was for me. And so I can attest to the power that is within that. As this young girl growing up, I know you're taking me to marriage and children, but I want to slow down a little and find out about high school. Talk to me about high school, and briefly, how did you deal with the kids there? How were you managing your relationship with those as you progressing in your life, as you're working with your family, your mom, your grandmother? How did you exist outside of family?
High school was an interesting experience for me. It's rather different than high schools in the US. In the Soviet Union, at a time that I was going to school, you went from first grade through the 10th grade. There were 10 grades, all in the same building, all with the same group of kids. So
Wow.
you were in one class, and there was nothing you didn't know about each other. And and you need to look at it and also realize at that point it's a country. The Soviet Union does not allow for too many choices. The
Yeah.
curriculum is preset for everything. So we're doing the military prep classes all together, putting the
Yeah.
gas mask and putting Kalashnikovs together, what have you. So everybody's equally equipped, and you don't choose a science. In high school, I did
Yeah.
not choose a science. Why? Because we were mandated to do every science. And I'm not saying it begrudgingly. I'm thrilled that I got a foundation in each science. And I'm also thrilled that being stripped from choices externally, I learned that freedom lies internally.
Yes.
That nobody could control what I thought internally and what I could create internally, despite the external choices. The one choice I did have in high school was which language to take. And we were all encouraged to take German. And I was one of those rare rebels that chose to take English. And I loved the language. I found that by studying the language, the power of etymology, I was fascinated by English language. I now think, and dream in English. It's become truly my adopted mother tongue, right? I believe in adoption.
Yeah.
Well, it's my adopted mother tongue. And but an interesting incident happened when one of my teachers came up to me. She found out that I was being tutored in English, and I was really good at math. I won a whole bunch of mathematic competition. They're called Olympiads in the Soviet Union. She pulled me aside and she said, "Why are you wasting your time learning English?
Wow.
You'll never leave here. Just focus on what you can do." I came home and I was crying. I told my mom, and she said, "Is that what you want to do?"
Wow.
And I said, "No, I want to learn English." And she said, "Then you learn English." And that became such a point of awareness for me, because very often I work with people that are still trying to create a life that they either believe they should want or that somebody else wanted for them.
For them. Yeah.
They're detached from it. They're anxious they're not succeeding in it. But is that what you want? And by you, I don't mean the little M-U, the little selfish, scared M. Is that the greater you wants it for you through you? I just, and so for me, that little voice inside that I didn't know to be a still small voice, that I refer to the voice of the Spirit in my life now, but I heard it. There was this little burning, and gratefully I had somebody else that reconnected me back to that burning of learning the language, not knowing why. And I think it's so important when you want something that deep to not look for justification of why.
Yeah.
When you have intuitive gift of guidance from God, it will take years, sometimes decades, to find the reason as to why. This is why so many of us quit. I didn't. And 30 years later, I wrote my first book.
Wow. That's a powerful lesson, though, Victoria, that your mom, with that specific incident, it was a powerful lesson that she deposited into your spirit. And I'm sure listening to you, you could see how it propelled you through life. I tell people that the reason they're stuck is because they haven't found their statement of faith. The statement of faith is something you believe so strongly that it will propel you to do the corresponding action to make your statement a reality. When you find that, that's when you will. It may be an internal something that you said to yourself. It may be a verbal thing, but you spoke it out. You said it within yourself, as some parts of the Bible says. That thing made this woman with the issue of blood, she said it within herself as she got up and pushed through a crowd to touch the hem of someone she heard can heal. And so the corresponding actions that she took was based on what she heard. She believed it. She took it and moved. And so a lot of people haven't done that yet. So you're walking through life. You are in school. That's a powerful lesson that you got. What did you do since you can't you're in here and you can't, your life is kind of set? How did you navigate to college and what was that like?
College was a fascinating experience, step by step, to look at what happened. But since I have the burning in the heart, I'm going to comment on that woman you've mentioned who took an action and got a healing. And a lot of us look at it and think it was an instantaneous healing.
Yeah.
For 13 years, she was looking for solution.
Yep.
I think it's a reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
You will have you will have that moment of instantaneous answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes 13 years. So in my case, my education took way more than 13 years to connect it back to. I first applied to a university in Kiev, the top university school for the international program. And it was very open that it was mostly boy club. And so, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they were taking 2 females and, 80 males ratio. And it was very hard for me to be standing looking at the results of oral exams. All exams were oral, where you pulled a ticket and you presented, and then you either got you got a mark. And it was hard to be looking at the open exam scoreboard and understand that I had higher score than all men, lower score than the top 2 females, which means I didn't get into school of my choice. And what a gift it was, right? Very often you go through unfair moment. And yes, I was very tempted to become a victim to situation, so much so that I became borderline anorexic, lost a ton of weight, mastering the pity, mastering the poor me syndrome. I have an unofficial Ph.D. in a poor me syndrome from that time, how unfair life was. To look back and say, what an incredible blessing, because as a result of not getting into that school, another door opened, an opportunity to travel to the U.S., to live in Santa Barbara for half a year, and then go back and go to a school in a new independent Ukraine that was reopened after 70 years of the Soviet Union regime. The school was open that was 750 years old, one of the very first European schools. All the professors spoke fluent English and were the best professors from the world. To get in, you had to speak English language. And not only this was my passion, I now came back from the United States and I've mastered the language. Yeah. And my economics professor was from Stanford, and my literature professor was from Harvard. And by the way, the biggest one, my constitutional law professor was from George Washington University, who happens to be my husband of 27 years and a father of my 2 amazing children. And so, Les Brown says, be hungry. And what I refer to that is when life happens to you, be hungry to find how it happened for you.
Yeah.
But then once you see how it happened for you, don't get stuck there, because you'll become power hungry and never fulfilled. Shift to how can it be happening through you, right? And so for me, I came to the U.S. and got a degree, finished my degree in George Mason University. And then after several years of teaching Russian, staying home with kids, homeschooling them, selling real estate, finding out the limitations to success principles practically, decided to continue with my education and got a Ph.D. in Metaphysical Sciences, which is the study of the subconscious and how quantum physics and God interact.
That's love that topic. It proves there is a designer when you get to that level. And so to look at the preciseness of the earth and everything, it cannot happen happenstance. It cannot. It is too precise. The balance of chemicals within the human body versus if we are off a percentage, there's a disease of that. So the preciseness of it, when you get to the quantum level area, You cannot come out of there not believing it. If you don't, I got a word for you, but the Bible tells me I can't call you that. So here you are. You've gotten all of these things, these accolades as you're moving through life. At what point, Victoria, as you're accumulating all of the knowledge and different things, did you decide, did you want to, or it's not even a decision, it's a pull. Talk to me when that pull, because I know how God is. When he begins to drop a little seed within inside of you, it becomes a force, if you wish, and that will cause you to move, and he will cause situations to put you in the place by which he can now talk to you and say, well, I would like to have you go this route. Talk to me as to that inner workings as you're gaining all this information and knowledge, as you begin to see and felt that inside, wait a minute, I'm not happy here. What was that like, and what was it that, and where were you at that time when those nudgings started?
You know, I kind of flippantly talked about the Ph.D. in self-pity, but I meant it, right? I meant it. I had looked at a lot of my life from a perspective of what could have been, and from a perspective of lack. And looking at life from perspective of lack and not gratitude creates a perspective of darkness. And so I found myself struggling in my marriage, struggling with finances, struggling with health emotionally, just really feeling that there was this mist of darkness gathering. And I kept trying to fight the darkness until literally in the middle of the night, I had a very beautiful moment where I woken up to that still small voice saying through the feeling of my mind and of my heart, the only way to chase the darkness is by turning on the light. And I sat up in my bed and I asked the first right question, God, how do I turn on the light? You see, the Bible says, ask and you shall receive. And the New Age echoes it, and we've translated it to ask for things and you will get stuff.
Yeah.
But I look at it very differently. I believe ask and you will receive is all about asking the questions, because whatever question you ask, you will receive an answer to.
Yeah.
So if you ask a question, what's wrong with me, you will get an answer. If you ask a question, what's wrong with them, you will also get an answer. But if you ask a question, how do I turn on the light? How do I become light? How do I bring light? How do I make it better? You start getting those answers. So that was a poignant moment in my life. And I've started studying everything I could on the concept of light. My PhD thesis actually is called Until You Shine. That became a book. My second book, Until You Shine, is my PhD thesis, where I point to all study of the concept of light and Christ being the light of the world. And I look at it as universal law of light and all the laws that support that teaching and why that is so, right? That was my thesis of PhD. And so I became fascinated by the power of light, so much so that I founded my company and called it You Too Shine. And there's a lot of meaning to it, because it's the two of us that makes us shine, me letting God's light in, you too shine.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that you too, if you're listening to it, you shine, and so forth and so on. But, that was the first moment. And the second moment was when for years and years and years and years, I've been praying for a person in my life, for their personal struggle, and being in a sacred place for me and hearing the words of Christ, peace I leave unto you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. It was the most healing moment, and it still remains to be the most healing scripture in my life, because when I feel my heart is afraid or troubled, I know I need to recenter back into God's peace. And I define peace is awareness of God's love. That's how I define peace. That's as simple as it gets. Peace is awareness of God's love. If I am feeling restless and not peaceful, I'm unaware of the love that is there for me, and I need to go surrender to that love.
Yeah, I did a teaching, Victoria, a couple weeks ago about the Bible calls us the light of the world. And while I was doing it, I had a picture of the world being, I was looking outside a couple of nights before and saw the lights that were emanating from all the buildings. And I was up looking down, and it was just beautiful. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And in my teaching, I had a picture of the world from a spiritual point of view, where here's the world within its darkness, and all the Christians, the light of the world, are just lighting up this globe, and the Father's looking down, and that's saying, "Wow, that's beautiful." And it kind of warmed my heart when I saw that imagery. Even the littlest and smallest light is still lighting, and he's still looking at it going, "Isn't that beautiful?" And I was telling people, your light is being seen. It is important how you shine that, and you shine that by how you live, what you do. What do you do? I mean, what's driving you when you live from love and all of these different things that you'd mentioned about? You are shining, not just so that other people are attracted to you and you can have a conversation to them. You have your thesis, as you stated, in the suffering and all of those things. And you came out because of that vision. Because I want to just stay there for a little, just to talk to people, because there's a lot of people within that darkness and they actually allow themselves to stay there. What would be your advice to those that are in those dark spaces? Is there something that you wish you knew then that you can utter that maybe help someone to move through or to begin to stand up within their dark?
I think it's letting go of pattern of insisting that you're not worthy for God's love. That is a lie that you're telling yourself. So taking the boxing gloves off, stop lying to yourself. You are worthy of God's love. You might not be capable of receiving God's blessings. Capacity for blessing is different from worthiness for love. Our world confuses the two. And so a lot of us feel so unworthy of receiving the light of love that we suffer quietly in darkness. So if you think of it, we'll start with a blessing. If you think of yourself coming out on a rainy day and you want to collect water coming from the sky, you can come up with a little cup, you can come up with a bucket, or you can come up with a bathtub. It's no wonder that a cup will collect very little water, and a bucket will get more, and a bathtub will be filled. Notice that the amount of rain is the same. So God's blessings are like that water being poured equally upon all. But our capacity to receive the blessing is determined by how big of a person we become. And that's a journey of increasing capacity to receive the blessing. And so you might feel that you don't even have a cup right now because of where you are. You are so not a big person in your mind right now. Well, but that's a blessing. But God's love, it is in your heart. It is the light through which you were created. At the moment of your creation, when that little zygote was formed, there was a spark of light placed into that very cell of creation by your Maker that expanded through every cell of your body, and that is waiting for you to allow to love you from within so you can connect to the love from without. So no matter where you are, put your hand on your heart and simply say, I give myself permission to feel God's love for me, right? It's possible for me to feel God's love for me as I am. And I think it is that confusion between worthiness of love and worthiness for blessing that prevents people from seeking and receiving healing love and then forgiving themselves through that love. And that process increases, it grows us, and it shows us a way to receive more blessings. And I've mentioned my son, and it's interesting, I said grows us. And if I may, I want to share this quick story about him. we instituted what we called with my husband family home evening. It was called in our church on Mondays, where we would talk about spiritual things. And he's about 3, and I'm insisted on maybe a year and a half. He's young, and I'm insisting on reverence during prayer. And he's being completely obnoxious. And so here I am, finding myself holding him by his shoulder, staring into his eyes, getting ready to come unglued on him. And all of a sudden, I'm literally stopped with this image of a plant. And I'm showing you can't make a plant grow by screaming at it.
Yeah.
You can't pull it up and force it to grow. You can just pour it and nourish it. So doesn't matter whether you're just a seed or a seedling or a sapling as you see yourself. Just allow God's love to be poured into you to start the process of growth.
It's a powerful place to be when one can allow themselves to experience that. And as you explain about allowing love to step in, and one of the principles as you begin to allow love to come into you, is you start looking at your behavior and yourself, your actions. It begins to change you. And that is why it is important, the principle when the disciples asked Jesus, says to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy mind, and with all thy strength. So when you are giving all of you in this relationship of love, you are going to change. You are going to recognize, as Victoria is talking about, those times that you're about to go over the edge. And that little love experience that you have with your Creator is enough to pull you back. It will pull you back. And watch your behavior. You will see, I promise you, you will change. One of the things that you will find yourself doing is forgiving yourself. You will learn that He forgives you. And then you will recognize, wait a minute, I need to forgive. So it's this place with your God that you learn about empathy, you learn about forgiveness, you learn about your way, how you speak, you learn about all of these beautiful attributes and tools that you acquire from this relationship. And that is why when I started this conversation, I said, you have to have a baseline that when you tell me you love me, I need to see what your baseline. But if you are in love with your God and you have this, I know that when you say, I love you, I know that is some real stuff because you've experienced the real stuff. So here you are, you're in your family unit and you are in the midst of the bliss of family. You know how funny that is.
Yeah, I'm blissing.
But you're having these callings and these demands, if you will, inner demands. That is there. It resides there. It lives there. It has lodged. Talk to me about those lodgings, if you will, and how they began to nurture them to bring forth what you mentioned on the onset of this conversation, because there is much that was in you that came out, purposeful delivery. Talk to me about those seed that was planted, and how did you recognize that it was planted, and the steps you began to take to bring it to pass?
I think the biggest step is recognizing the processes and naming them. God has always spoken to me, as He does to all of us, but learning that it is God's voice came through properly identifying it as the feeling of peace. And so having ignored it many times, or reasoning that was an unreasonable demand, and I could write many more books on that topic than on the ones of following it and seeing the blessings. But I want to say that ignoring that voice enough times and seeing the consequences was all a part of, I believe, God's plan for me and a plan for all of us. I believe that as we learn to discern that nudge, as you said, or prompting, I call them promptings. And if we follow those promptings, we look back at the miracles that they have brought, it supports our faith and our path. When we ignore them, I believe it also supports our faith and our path, because very often we see the results of that also. And I believe the great Creator, knowing us from the beginning, knows when to prompt us, knowing that we'll ignore it, and when to prompt us, knowing that that's the important one and we'll listen. So we're in training, right? So in my case, today, as a practice, and I have done it for 27 years. I was baptized 27 years ago. Well, I was rebaptized. I was baptized without knowing what was happening when I was a teen, as a tradition, and I honor and I'm grateful for that. But I was baptized consciously as a choice of a path in my life in 1995, so even longer than that. And so since that day, as a part of my morning routine, I ask for guidance of how I can best surrender my life to God's will for that one day. You see, I'm not praying, show me the way to surrender for the rest of my life, because I know me. I'm impatient. And, I know I can keep my commitment for a day. So I'm just being within the limits of my limitation. I say, what is my guidance today? And I listen for an answer. And sometimes an answer comes as a feeling. Sometimes it's a call from a person. Sometimes it comes as a verse in a scripture or in a different book that I'm reading, that when I read something good, as all good, all genuinely, truly good comes from the maker of all good, and it'll resonate, it'll feel within my heart as that answer I'm seeking for the day, and I will follow that. But I think as important are the days when I don't get that clarity or that guidance, and I call them my trust days. This is when I say, all right, I'm going to keep walking and do what I believe is right. And if I'm knocking my head on the wall, please point me towards the door. And I think it's very important, because in my business, I felt very strongly that I had to start my business. And I started it in 2013 full time with 4 other partners. There were 5 of us. And then it was like Agatha Christie's story. And then there were 4, and there were 3, and then there were 2. And the reason why was, yes, they had human shortcomings, but I was a leader that could not describe a vision for them because I was not given a vision. Yeah. But I knew I had to keep walking. And so I think it's so important that sometimes all you know is that you have to keep moving and having faith to keep moving. Because after 7 years of just doing this one day at a time, go help this client, go make this call, have a feeling somebody needs me. After 7 years of that, the Spirit told me, now go to Hawaii. I'm like, okay, I'm in. This is a good revelation. So I go to Hawaii, and I have a most incredible vision given to me there of my business for the next 10 years. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, oh my luck, she's a woman with a vision. She can cast a vision. And I'm like, no, I am a woman who was blind for 7 years. And I don't take the vision for granted, because he who gives it to me today might take it away tomorrow. Yeah. And that's all right. It'll be for a good reason.
Yeah, it is. I tell people, God will never ask you to do something that you can do. He'll always ask for something you can't do. He came to Moses and he said, I need you to go back. Moses ran because he killed a couple of people. He's like, I don't want to go back in there. But God says, I want you to go back because I have some very important things and people there that I need you to guide them. He says, I can't do it. And so God didn't tell him anything, how he was going to do, just tell him to go. And so what he looks for us is the faith. He wants us to trust him. Gideon was the same thing. God showed up. He says, whoa, I'm no good. I can't do that. Deborah, all of these people, when God came and he would tell them, because he sees something bigger than you and I will ever see. And like Victoria says, he never really tells you the full vision. There's the ingredients that he's looking for in you. And that ingredients is trust, is faith, we call it. We believe that we would go regardless. We don't know everything. But he'll show us little steps here and there. And sometimes he's not going to say anything there. And then you are finding yourself in prayer. But all of it is purposeful. But that ingredients that he wants from you is very expensive, because it will determine, as Victoria said, it'll determine what happens? Either you will have faith not to do it, or you will have faith to do it. But that is important, that piece right there. For without it, it is impossible to please God. So when you do that, then you have to assume that you are pleasing Him, even if you don't have all the information. And so just remember, He will ask you stuff that you can't do, because if you could do it, you would have done it. He's going to give you something so big that you're going to need Him to do it. But He wants you to do it with Him. It's a partnership that is so beautiful. And He is honored to walk with you, and you should be honored to walk with Him. So here you are in beautiful, Hawaii, sun, you're tanning out there, the waves, eating all the good food, and God comes in, drops this stuff in your heart, 10 years out, and you go, I love this. This is going to be great. So talk to me, because I know sometimes when we get all that, we go, yeah, I see it, Lord. How are we going to get there? I see that. So talk to me as to when you saw it and the beauty of it, but the vastness of it. How did it make you feel? And what did it do to you, Victoria, when you got that dream?
My first reaction was actually just, see, I knew I was not crazy, or else I'm so crazy now that it doesn't matter anymore. Relief. It was just a sense of complete relief of being like, okay, this is starting to make sense. But the beautiful thing is that by then, having stumbled, and struggled and just trying to figure things out, having a clear guidance was not overwhelming for me, because by then, and already having succeeded in so many things, I've never, ever assumed that I was responsible for any of it.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm only responsible for the effort.
Yes.
And the success and the expansion, or the disastrous outcome, so you will, that could be perceived disastrous, I am not responsible for the result. This is where He is my business partner, and He got results, and I got the effort. And so that's the only thing I have control over. And so I can honestly say I was not overwhelmed with the vision, because I knew I was looking at His work.
Yeah.
And I was only asking, what are I call them 3-minute 3 steps a day. So what are my 3-minute 3 steps a day today to be a small puzzle piece of this great work? And the first one was create the daily affirmations. You do energy, work with energy, create daily affirmations. The book was written, Heaven is for Everyone, from those daily affirmations as a calendar, and then created into the app. That was a 3-year progress, but it started with do daily affirmation now. Yeah. You've done it for a year. Now do a book. Now do the app. And so I was shown a path of that, but that was the reaction. It was really a great relief and a great excitement.
I know one of the key ingredients in success is gratitude. It is, God makes a statement, and He says that whatsoever we lay our hands upon shall prosper. And so then He's looking at you, and He makes a statement, whatever you lay your hands on shall prosper, because we're doing this together. When I recognize that, I shift my focus from the trying to make it happen to being grateful that it will happen. And so I don't know how it will happen, but I know it will happen. And so when I made that switch from always pushing and pushing, because that's how I was trained, in my mind. And when I came to that place to, as you said, learning to surrender, and said, okay, I am grateful that you are even interested in making what I'm doing and working with the works of my hand, that you are going to make it prosper. I am grateful for that. I am so thankful that you are mindful of that. And it changed my life to where I began to God just began to move, and cause things to happen. But I became more grateful of what I was doing. It shifted everything, and my focus became different. And as you said, there was a peace that came about it that is very important. And as you said, when that is not there, you're off somewhere. You're out of love, and I like that lesson that you gave to us. So here you are. You are this woman. You have accomplished the task so far, because I know he's gonna add all kinds of stuff to those things. He's gonna take you to another country and have said, "Hey, go to this country," and then I give you another vision for another 10 years. So he does things like that. So as you have been giving birth to these things as alone with God as your partner, and I want you to talk about some of those times, if you can pull out a story here and there, Victoria, about people that you have reached and that were stuck, if you will. And you had one of your coaches walk them through their situations, and you heard the story, because a lot of people are stuck. And the purpose of Threads of Enlightenment is to bring folks like Victoria to you, to get you unstuck, that guide to help walk with you. Why? Because they've been there before. And because they've been there before, I tell people, they know the question to ask you at every specific time, because they were exactly where you were. And they know what questions to ask to bring you your desired outcome and to get you faster. Talk to us about one of those, or a couple of those stories that your team has relayed to you, and you have experienced yourself, of those that were stuck.
To start with, most of my team has been grown up from my clients. So my incredible coaches are my clients from 7 or 10 years ago, who have walked the journey of peaceful, prosperous, purposeful living and said, wait a minute, this has taken me from this to this, so I want to be a part of this vision. I've never reached out to anybody and invited them into my business. I mentioned the girls that are my avid developers and my marketing director. I'll start with their journey. My marketing director came from also from former USSR, from Russia, actually. We find ourselves at all kinds of love exchanges, me being Ukrainian and her being Russian, right? You talk about learning to live fully what we preach and what we empower people to do. And so she was seeking help, and she was seeking help privately for being stuck. And so the same spirit that guided me to be recording YouTube videos guided her to find them. She was watching my free YouTube videos for a whole year. And there's this one video where I help you open your neural receptors in your brain, how to rewire your brain to be able to experience love and joy. You see, a lot of us simply don't have receptors in our brain to do so. And so she was so impacted by that video that she then looked up the training sessions that I did. And it was on the 4th or 5th seminar, the one that is called You and God in Theta Healing Technique, that she started crying, and she said, today, for the first time, I feel that I am loved by God. We're talking 2 years of self-worth study. And in another year, she said, you have such a powerful message, and it has shifted my life from being stuck and unworthy to being wanting to serve and to help others. You're teaching this other seminar. Can I trade in, because it was a pricey 3-week training, can I trade in the training for revamping your whole website and your marketing campaign? She became the first partner in the business, right? Because she was so fully believing into the power of the shift of the shift of mind and the shift of heart. And so every single, first of all, coach has a story, whether it is my 2 coaches that I helped go through years of cancer, and that they know the power of healing that comes through surrender to love. And they also know the limitations that the cancer programs hide in our subconscious mind and how to remove them. So they are on the team. My most close miracle to my heart, which is why both my brother and my sister-in-law on the team is their baby. My little nephew, who still in utero, was diagnosed with severe heart condition. And when he was born with a helicopter nurse in the room, because if he were to not make it, maybe his organs would extend somebody else's life. He was hooked up to all kinds of devices immediately and put on medication to keep his artery open, because his one condition was severe artery coarctation that did not allow the artery to open fully to allow for the blood. His other two conditions were the two valves that were not formed and not opening. He had a hole in his heart and a murmur in his heart. I was allowed to be there for the birth, as I was already working on healing and working as an energy healer in my sister-in-law's life. Now, we can talk about every single modality that's been used, every single prayer that went in, but in the end, the great overall designer, God, has granted a miracle of healing. Yes, using us and our tools as a small part of that miracle. But not only my nephew avoided a surgery, miraculously opening the artery, within months, his valves miraculously opened up and grew. Within a year, he was taken off the cardiac watch. And his favorite thing to do today when he's 5, to run. Nobody can take that story away from my brother and my sister-in-law. Hence, he's my Christian Guide Me coach, and she's a Breathe Me coach, the first hypopressive coach in the United States to connect you to the breath of life. Now, she knows what that breath of life is. She also knows that God gave us lungs, and if they are not working properly, we cannot enjoy that breath of life. So, just speaking of my team, as you can see, there's a lot of tenderness, and that's what makes us who we are, because we live what we train.
I love that. Many people come on to have this conversation with me, and I always tell them the most important thing to get when you are developing your and they would say client and team and stuff like that. I said, focus on getting disciples. I said, disciples are the ones that change the world. They really do, because they have been in the energy, within the knowledge, within the experience. They have tasted, they have drank, they have been taught, they have been moved, they've been all of it. And when they get up, they are going to stand with such power, that just uncontrollable power. And we watched a few of them change an entire world. And so when you were talking about it and you're mentioning your disciples, my heart jumped. I was so excited to hear it, because I know the power of that team. Everyone that has been listening to us, the power of this team is available for you. It's up to you. What do you want to use your faith for? To stay where you are? Or do you want to change your trajectory, your family? Who knows where you would be with one phone call, one purchase of a book, one listening to a tape? Your destiny is within your hands. You are not listening to this just by happenstance. I just want to let you guys know that from the onset. You were brought into this to listen to it because there's something required of you. It's called faith. Take your step. Get in touch with Victoria and her team, her disciples. And I guarantee you, I'm talking to her and I could tell the authority that she walks in her work, in her space. And I know that her team walks in there and hers as well. Get in touch with her. I'm going to provide everything for you guys to reach her, because you need to. You're not listening to this by mistake. I am telling you. I feel that there are many of you guys that you need to reach out to her so that she can assist you in shifting where you are right now, to bring the greatness of yourself to the forefront so that you can see who you are and all those around you, so that you can change this world along with us. Victoria, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I'm high.
Ken, what a glorious conversation. I feel nourished, and thank you for creating this platform to be the light that you are. I'm so grateful to have met and to have shared this time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all that you've done and all that you've said today. And I take much to heart because I believe you've reached one person already, and that's me. Thank you so much.
And it's all worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you.